Hey everybody, it's Sleepy Reader with a special guest. I've also got my tea and cookies, so it's a wild
Ah,
night. Where'd my cookies go?
woo!
My special guest is another wild man. That's Travis,
Good evening, everybody.
and I just kind of wanted to chat, but I wanted to do it publicly, so I thought up a theme that we would talk about sort of what's cool about comic books now and what we're looking forward to in the future. Um, and I kind of wanted to start with, and I don't know if there's been any changes in the way Travis collects comics than he has in the past, but I haven't seen. You used to show us back issues and stuff,
hmm
and so I don't know if you're still collecting back issues these days or if you're just getting the current comics.
Right now, I'm basically just getting current books. Yeah, I finished up this last year. I finished up my Hellblazer run,
Oh
and
right,
I and
and
I
before
just
that, Doom Patrol.
I just like a couple months ago finished up getting all the Doom Patrol. I haven't actually. At some point, I need to do a video on that. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Right.
Um, But yeah, so I don't have anything right now that it's a burning desire for me to be hunting for back issues and whatnot. I mean, there's a few odds and ends here and there that if I come across them, I'd be interested in. But I'm not really. There's nothing out there that's old that I'm like dying to collect. I'm not trying to complete a Batman run or a detective run or any of that kind of stuff. Um, Partially due to the fact I'm because of where I'm located at. I'm for me it's online shopping is
Right.
and that's hard to get the good deal on that sort of a thing. I don't get to fortunately run into the dollar bins or any of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and I don't want to compete with everybody else that I know that's out there that's collecting a lot of those a lot of those books. So I remember when I was trying to get the Commandy run, which I'm still short a few issues on.
Right.
But the majority of that, it seemed like everybody else was looking for Commandy at the same time as me, and I know that, like when I was doing eBay bids and stuff like that, I was bidding against other comic book
Other
collectors that I
YouTubers.
knew. I'm sure I was. I mean, it was never actually discussed, but I'm positive because
Right.
there were people who won some auctions and were showing their books, and I'm like, I'm almost positive those are the books I was bidding on too. So
Well, all's fair in love and Commandy, but
sure, that's right.
and there are actually lots of Commandy out there to be had,
Yeah.
and you ended up getting them very dirt cheap.
Yes, literally. Oh, jeez. Yeah.
So, and well, there's pluses and minuses to your situation. I mean, you can do impulse buying on eBay, of course, but there's less opportunity for impulse buying. I am in kind of a nexus of impulse buying with all the stuff that's available
Yeah.
where I live. I just yesterday and I'd like to do this more often. Stop by the our library, our county library, which is a very big library system, has a store where they sell books that they don't want to keep at the library anymore. And for $2 a piece, I picked up one of P. Craig Russell's Ring of the Niebling comics,
Oh,
uh,
cool.
graphic novels,
Right.
and which looks really beautiful. Of course, it is permanently kind of marked. You can pull all this stuff off, but it's really hard to get the stickiness away.
Sure.
But what I really try to get at the library is hardbacks, because once you remove their their plastic dust jacket, you still have a nicely maintained original paper dust jacket
Right.
underneath. So you get a pretty nice volume, and this is a Spider-Woman drawn by the Luna brothers. I never even knew they drew anything at Marvel,
Oh, near
but I'm
I.
quite into the Luna brothers right now, so I was kind of excited to find that.
Yeah.
Um, and in the back of my mind, it's kind of silly, but I think, oh, someday my daughter can read this. When I find something that's actually looks like
Sure.
one of the good female superhero things.
Yeah.
And a hardback that, for $2, that was really nice.
Right.
And then at kind of random sales at some other. I'm showing this partially because I never get around to doing my haul videos anymore. But I picked up a bunch of 2000 ADs, and I want to try this out.
hmm
I think you can actually subscribe to them, but you have to get them in 4-packs or something. But I just thought I'd see whether I like that. And then, sorry for dominating this segment, but
Yeah.
also right after Free Comic Book Day, the Things from Another Planet comic book stores in my area. It's a little chain that's related to Dark Horse. Had a bunch of comics for sale for 50 cents, and I just grabbed a bunch I thought I might want to read someday. There's these A1s, which I never saw anywhere.
Right.
This is anthology from England.
Yeah, I think I've got like the first 2 issues of.
Yeah, they don't look that good, but for 50 cents, I was kind of curious about it. I got a whole bunch of X, which was a Dark Horse superhero comic that I'm kind of curious about, but I didn't want to spend a lot of money on. I've got a ton of those issues. And a few random Superman Unchained. I'm hoping to eventually get the whole Superman Unchained run for 50 cents a piece or $1 a piece.
Be nice if they put out those last couple issues of that.
Yeah, eventually that's coming. So I'm in no rush to piece together my run.
Right.
So I go to these library store, comic book shops. There's also some used bookstores I've discovered with 50-cent bins. And then I still have occasionally gone on eBay. And one thing I did, which is kind of a childhood dream, is I got a complete run of the original Marvel black and white Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yeah.
All reader copies, except for #1. I got to buy that separately. So I got the run except for #1 for I think $45 or something, because they were quote reader copies. They came unbagged, and I haven't bagged them yet. 1, I have to buy some magazine-sized bags, but 2, they smelled of smoke. It's like they've been in a smoky apartment for 20 years. So I've aired them out now, and they don't smell bad at all. So
that's good.
Problem solved. But I can't tell you how obsessed I was with Planet of the Apes as a kid, and I had about 3 of those issues.
Yeah, I never had the comic books, but definitely Planet of the Apes was a big deal, even for me as a kid. I remember the local radio station had some sort of a contest, and if you called in the right way, in the right time, and answered this question, you actually won a date with now I've drawn a blank on her name, the lead female ape in the series.
Oh.
Scientist. What's her name? I can't remember her name. But anyway.
No, I can't remember her name either.
And I remember as a kid I tried to dial in to win that. Of course I didn't, but
well,
it was a big thing. It was like,
have a date with her.
Well, I probably couldn't have. I mean, technically.
How could anyone?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that the actual actress wasn't showing up, but I'm assuming they had somebody dressed up like her, and you got to go out on a dinner date.
That's kind of hilarious. So you would be having a dinner date with a stand-in for the actress pretending to be an ape.
Right. It would be awesome.
It would be pretty cool. I wonder who won it.
I don't know. No idea. Right.
So how old were you when that happened?
I don't remember. I had to have been, I don't know. I couldn't have been very old.
Maybe
6?
It was when the TV show came out, maybe?
Could be. I don't know.
Because you were pretty young when that came out.
Yeah, because I don't remember exactly what time it was or what that was around. But definitely was into the movies. Definitely watched the TV show. Yeah, it probably was the TV show. It couldn't have been the movies.
Because
But I distinctly remember there being that radio competition thing. That was a big deal. I was like, wow. So.
I got to go see the last Planet of the Apes movie in the theater when I was 11. Mm-hmm. So you would have been quite young at that point.
Right.
I think you're about 8 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. Or maybe 9. Although you look 20 years younger.
Yeah.
Or at least on screen. Live, I can't remember what you look like.
There you go.
I'm joking. So I had all these plans to switch to buying a lot more trades and a lot less floppies.
Mm-hmm. How's that working out for you?
It's not working out. And one of the things that has recently caused me to buy a lot more floppies is Batman Eternal. Not just Batman Eternal, but it seems to have, talking about it on YouTube and stuff seems to have turned on my Batman brain again. So I ran out and bought Detective, and I'm sticking with Batman and which I kept thinking I should switch over to trades. I was going to do detective in trades for sure, but
So you picked up this new run of detective with
just today, in fact.
Oh,
I
okay.
picked up the first 3 issues of the new creative team, and I might read it and decide to drop it, but I'm suddenly craving a lot more Batman. And I'm also really enjoying the weekly experience. So today, when I was picking those up, I also picked up the first 4 or 5 issues of Future's End, which I suspect sucks, but if it's even slightly good, I might jump on it because I'm wanting weekly comics.
That has been kind of nice. I mean, like I said, this is really my first experience with actually getting a weekly book while it's coming out weekly, and I was a bit leery of it when it started up, but I'm actually really enjoying it. It's been fun. I mean, not every issue's been like, rocking my socks off or anything, but it's been fun. You get enough of it fast enough, it feels like it's fast paced and a lot's going on. I mean, I don't know if I were to go back now and read the first 7 or 8, 9 issues that we have out. I don't know that if they would feel that way now if I read them all together or not. But
it might be a rough read in trade. It may be just fun enough for weekly in a way.
Yeah.
But that's one of the, although to kind of skip ahead thematically, but one of the things I was thinking about is, I mean, because Marvel does all the double shipping, and I know they've tried weekly comics before, but I wonder if that starts to make more and more sense with the way our culture's going and everything. And the way the main people who buy comic books now are the weekly warriors, or whatever you want to call us. So that it's much easier to market a weekly comic. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. Are they selling more? Is DC selling more books because they got this weekly book, or did these weekly books just
take up a similar amount of sales space as some set of 4 other books?
Because I mean, for me personally, it didn't. I'm not collecting more because I'm collecting it because I've actively been not. I mean, there's stuff I'm not collecting. I've dropped some things that were on my pull, or they're done, kind of a thing. And this has just kind of filled that void at most. It's not like it's above and beyond.
Right.
So.
Well, there's a difference, maybe personality difference, but also location difference. I can impulse buy. Today I went back to the comic book store and bought a whole bunch of comic books I wasn't planning to buy, right?
Yeah, and that's harder for me to do, yeah.
Because the weekly comic kind of got me all stirred up, and I wanted more. Although my limiting factor is always that my life is too hectic and I can't read as many comics as I would like to.
Right.
Although on Wednesday my wife and daughter are going on a camping trip, so I'll have a whole night to myself.
There you go.
I almost thought about taking the day off from work, but I don't think I can pull that off. So I guess that was, for me, the weekly thing kind of drives me to the comic book store even more or something. So I just wonder, it's hard to tell if that, and certainly they did the 52 and they did the countdown, and a long, long time ago, I don't know if you were reading comics at the time of the death of Superman.
Nope.
But back in that time, they published 4 different Superman comics a month, but it was all one story going from book to book to book.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Which makes for terrible trades because each chapter of the trade is written and drawn by a different team.
Right.
But it was kind of fun at the time. For a while, I was reading more Superman than I normally would.
When I was a teen, there were some Spider-Man books that were that way that went through. Spider-Man seemed to have a bunch of titles at the time. The Amazing Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man. There was a bunch of them, and they had some storylines that went through all those.
Yeah.
And literally every issue was, and you really did need to read each of the issues to know what was going on and whatnot, and that kind of a thing. I can't imagine what that would be like put together.
Yeah, and that was exactly how Superman was, and I think Batman was that way for a while too, but it's hard for me to remember for sure. So maybe it's just a wild hair theory of mine. I'm looking for changes in the industry.
Yeah.
But it feels like from the late '90s on, the market has maybe been graphic novel driven, and the weekly comic book seems different than that to me. Again, maybe because it feels like it would make bad trades, but
Yeah, I don't know, because I just read some articles this last week that I thought were pretty interesting about, the trade versus the singles and whatnot. And then, granted, the articles I read had more to do with independent comics or creator-owned type comics and whatnot, and how vital the single issue was. If they couldn't sell X number of single issues, it didn't matter what the trade was going to do. They couldn't make a living off of the trade. That was, and I just wonder, we all kind of been talking about how the fact, well, as long as it can squeak by, and then the trade sells well, like the case of like iVampire, we've talked in the past about, it sold really poorly as singles, and then suddenly the trades were being bestsellers, and people were excited and buying those, but it was too late; it was already dead. And I just wonder how many books are that way. How many books are. The reality is, if we all wait for trades, we're not going to see a trade because it's not going to make it there, or we're going to get one, and that's it. Good or not, it doesn't matter.
It's a little baffling though, because they write so much for the trade that it just reading comic books makes you think they must make most of their money from the trade.
Well, they write it so they can get that second, so they can reasonably put together that secondary sale, I think.
Right.
More so than, so it ends up creating definitely that kind of a situation. I don't know if I've heard people say, yes, I'm specifically writing for the trade, but yeah, it's pretty obvious that everything seems to be geared to 5 or 6 issue increments.
5 or 6 issue chunks.
Yeah.
And in some comics, you sense they don't even try to sort of have the beginning, middle, end-ish feeling to a single issue at all. It's just the next thing that happened.
Right.
Saga does try to do that. There's always a little cliffhanger at the end, and there's always a shock at the opener, or some sort of thing like that. Mm-hmm. But it feels like some other books I read, there's no pain.
They're not giving you that. They're not giving you that 3-act kind of a thing where you.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
But well, anyway, that's something that's puzzled me ever since I've started thinking more about comic books.
Yeah.
I think we discussed that last October, in fact.
Probably.
Yeah, and well, another thing that's interesting because Image seems to dominate the trade sales charts that I see. Mm-hmm. But if that's not sustainable.
Well, and then they were talking about how many issues they had to sell though. As an independent book, they could the difference for them. I can't remember what the numbers were. And I hate to throw a number out and it'd be wrong, but it was like a couple thousand issues, single issues, was so huge for them. The difference between 10 and 12,000 singles was huge. If they couldn't get above that 10,000 mark, and I'm not saying that's the number because I can't really tell you the truth. I can't remember what the number was. If it was like 10 or 8 or something like that, it wasn't really huge, but as long as they could hit that, they could make basically a living at producing the comic book. The second they fall under that, then they're doomed. It's kind of like, because it's money out of their, especially the way, like in the case of Image, how it's designed, it's their money up front, the creator's money up front, basically, they're not seeing a paycheck out of the thing until much further down the road. That it was really important. I need to find where those articles at again. I meant to do a video about it this week and never got around to it because I thought it was really interesting how that is, because we all talk about that. I'm gonna trade weight on this, or I'm gonna pick this up in singles. And if we all actively decide to trade weight everything we hear is coming out, we're not going to get these. To me, it sounds like we're not going to get these stories because they can't do them. They can't afford to do them.
Yeah. Well, something like The Sixth Gun has hideously bad sales, and I'm afraid that I loved the oversized hardback I got so much that I want to wait for those, which is
Right.
an even longer wait.
Yeah.
But I liked it so much that way. That's the way I want to consume it.
Yeah, and I don't know, like with the case of Oni Press, I don't know where, how that works.
Right.
How what they need to sell to, to survive on that or whatever. Um, and I know the sales aren't great on it. I'm happy they're continuing to do it. I always wonder. It's one of the questions anytime I meet those guys somewhere. I'm always afraid to ask that. Are you losing money on doing this? I'm always afraid they're not going to make it to that 50th issue because 50 is what they're done. They're done at 50.
Right.
But it must be doing somewhat okay because they're getting ready to do another mini off of another spin-off of it.
Yeah.
They did that Son of a Gun, and now they've got another one that's going to tell some other backstory of some of the other characters from the book. So how could it be doing? I mean, they must be doing somewhat well, or they wouldn't continue to throw their time away on it.
They must be making the money on trades because the last time I saw figures, they were like under 4,000 copies, and and on top of that, I see them in the dollar bin where I go shopping,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which is scary.
But they're always sold out of the trades. It seems like.
Yeah, and it seems like just judging from our community that a lot of people bought that hardback,
Yeah,
and that probably made them a lot of money.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I got 9 more months, I think, and then they'll be at 50, and then I won't have to worry about it, I guess. But I
Well,
still
maybe Oni Press just is willing to invest and wait for the trade profits,
Mhm.
and some others aren't. I mean, DC isn't apparently with things like iVampire and
Right.
the like.
Um, I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand how how that works. Obviously, because I don't understand how come we're still getting Swamp Thing. Not that I'm
Right.
complaining because I like it, but as we've talked before, its sales are below some of the other books they just canceled. So I don't know how that works. How that whole
Although
part of the machine.
there's some others way lower that they haven't canceled yet anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do worry about Swamp Thing. And it must be, I mean, some of these things like Swamp Thing just must sell better in trades than other things. But maybe I'm way off base.
Yeah.
Uh, so are you feeling? Oh, I'm trying to decide whether to skip over. How are you feeling about indies versus Marvel and DC at the moment?
What do you mean? Which I'm
Are you
liking
feeling
better,
like
or
you're going to buy a lot less Marvel and DC?
I am. I'm slowly my DC and Marvel purchasing is well, actually, that's not true. Right now, my Marvel purchasing is on the uptick, just because they're putting out more new books that kind of fringe type stuff that I might be interested in. So I've
Mhm.
been giving some of that stuff a try. So there's a
Like
bit of an
that.
uptick, right? That Magneto, Moon Knight for a couple more issues. Um, so there's those books which I wasn't getting before. Um, but like my DC books are actually on the slide down right now. I just did a comic book order, and I was collecting all of the Justice League books. Now I'm just going to be getting just the Justice League 3000. I'm not getting any of the other
Uh-huh.
ones anymore. Mostly because some of those books just I don't. For me right now, they're not going anywhere. They're not striking any kind of a chord that makes me really excited about them. So it's time to move on to something else. And there's enough other great stuff being put out there that I have to make a choice as to what I'm getting and not getting. So and I'm more willing to take a risk on the independent stuff that's coming out, I guess, just to see what they are. Because and not to say it's all been good. There have been some stinkers along the way,
Right.
but just to I rather jump on some of those and take a risk on some of those than continue with the mediocrity that some of the stuff I'm reading right now feels like it is. So
Yeah, I feel like I mean Marvel feels like it's on an uptick quality wise for the kind of thing I'm interested in, which is the stuff that's a little less involved with the continuity
hmm
and has a little more of a unique voice to it. Um, Although at the same time, they seem more and more corporate in other aspects, um, like the current rumors that they're gonna not publish the Fantastic Four during a certain period while the movie is coming out,
wow.
and uh, and the whole inhumanity thing, I think, is completely orders from above to create something like the X-Men that we can use in the movies.
Mm.
And the whole cosmic thing had to do with the movie promotions too.
Sure, sure.
But it does seem, on the other hand, there's these ones like Magneto and Moon Knight and
Miss Marvel.
possibly Shang-Chi and other things that might be quite interesting. The Tradmore Ghost Rider, but I'm holding off on most of these, and I'm either going to read them digitally or in trade.
hmm hmm
Oh,
Yeah.
I do
So,
want to say hi to Comic Crack, hi Terrence, and hi to Ed from Ed's Corner. Those are our two viewers at the moment that I
hey
know
guys.
of. Where does it say how many viewers you have? It used to say right there, but I don't see it.
I
They keep changing it.
think it's up towards the top right hand side. I want to say, but that might
It
not be
used to
right.
be there, but I don't see
Yeah.
it. Oh well, we have
Yeah.
some viewers, or did at some point. 3 viewers. It's down on the bottom now.
Oh, okay.
3 viewers. But
All
one
right.
of them is me, actually, in
Yeah.
another window. So we have 2 viewers.
But yeah, like I said, you're right though with the Marvel, the way Marvel's operating right now, you definitely have these two sides to the company. It really does feel like you've got these books that are kind of operating on their own for however long they manage to do that,
Right.
and then you've got all the ones that feel like they're just really tied into, the whatever the event is,
Of the
they're massive,
moment.
and of course there's one every quarter, you know, there's everything's massively tied into that and enmeshed in that in some sense or another. I've really been enjoying Loki, Agents of Asgard, and of course it's going to take a hiatus. The actual book itself
Oh,
is
really? I didn't know that.
stopping. Yeah, is stopping for 2 or 3 months at least, and they're having a Thor and Loki, origins or original sin, whatever the event is that's
Uh-huh.
going on right now. It's all tied into that. And if you want to know what's going on with Loki during that time, you have to read that event, and then after the event's all done, the book's going to start back up again.
And Thor's the regular Thor book's been incredible and not involved in anything since Marvel Now, so maybe that's the end of that little picnic.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I really
It's
liked Loki, Agent of Asgard, but I kind of put that on the back burner because I was reading too much. But I
sure,
was hoping to get back to it later.
sure.
Yeah, that's another. There's quite a thick bunch of nice, unique books like that one coming out from Marvel right now.
hmm And right now, my problem with DC is it doesn't feel like there's anything much like that. I mean,
Right.
I'm getting a real kick out of, like we were talking about the Batman Eternal, I'm getting a real kick out of that just because of its own, kind of the thing that it is makes it entertaining. Um, but
Earth 2, are you still going to get that?
yeah, yeah, I'm not sure what happens when this other supposedly weekly title
That's true. It
rolls.
feels like that's going to ruin Earth 2. Right now, Earth 2 is great in my mind, but
Yeah. Oh, that's a fun book. It feels different. It feels like it's got its own energy, its own motion going on. The rest, well, and there's a few exceptions. Wonder Woman's its own thing.
right.
We've talked about that a lot. But it just feels like the DC universe as a whole. It feels like most of the books. I don't know if they're tied into something. And maybe I'm still just fatigued from the whole Forever Evil thing. It still just got me feeling about the DC product. Um, So I'm wanting
Yeah, I
something
mean,
to be.
that's a
I
good
wanting
point.
something to come out and be exciting, and right now nothing feels exciting. There's stuff I enjoy, but I'm not excited by
Right.
it. You know.
Well, they've had a few long-running things, much longer than these Marvel books, that have so far maintained most of their independence, like Wonder Woman and Swamp Thing and Earth 2. but Earth 2 seems doomed now. And and a newer one, Justice League 3000, seems pretty invulnerable to being mucked about with.
Right.
However long that lasts.
Right.
I picked up Infinity Man and the Forever People. And you'll be glad to know, at least in my opinion, it was a dog. It was really bad.
No, I'm not surprised. I
love the art, but it couldn't.
I'm thrilled and frustrated at the same time that it seems to be that a lot of Dan Didio's favorite characters are my favorite characters of the DC universe. So that's exciting in one way because there's a better chance they're going to get pushed out and back into the universe and get to be used and whatnot. But unfortunately, he chooses to be the person to do it,
Right.
and he might be a great CEO.
Right.
He is not a great plotter, I don't think.
No, he isn't. And I'm assuming the terrible dialogue I was reading was at least in part his fault.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't enjoy. So I've gotten to the point now where I don't even try anymore. As much as I wanted to. Fourth world stuff, I love the fourth world characters and all that kind of stuff. But no, I just decided that everybody would have to be talking about just being incredible before I go and pick it up. And you just sealed the deal for me. I'm glad I didn't.
Well, the art was lovely. The art was really a really nice Kirby homage or whatever.
Right.
It did make me think that with the right colorist, I'd love to see the classic Kirby recolored because the colors were really beautiful. Well, since we're talking a mishmash rather than being in order of anything, one thing that has caught my notice, I feel like coloring is changing again. And I feel like, because we had back at some point in the 90s, they started sort of doing digital coloring and it was a real mess.
Right.
And then it's slowly gotten better, and I feel like certain people probably led the way, like Dave Stewart and someone Sinclair at DC, I think, was one of the early ones to master the digital. Anyway, but now I'm noticing, particularly with starting with sagas when I first noticed it, artists doing their own coloring and doing kind of unique things with the coloring, and I feel like we're going to see more and more where the art and color are completely integrated, a sort of singular vision. Other examples are, I know not too many people are getting it, but Undertow, I saw some of the black and white artwork, and it looked terrible, but it looks beautiful with the color, which is done by the artist. So it's completely, as line work, it's completely incomplete because the artist knows what he's going to do with the color, I assume.
Yeah.
And certainly Sex Criminals, which is again colored by the artist except for some help with the flatting or whatever,
right.
Integrates the color and the line art. I don't think either can exist without the other in a sense.
Right.
So I'm sort of looking to the future of comics that way. I'm thinking we're going to see, especially with comics that aren't churned out as product, so the artist has a little more time to do it, like the Image Way, where they take these breaks when they need them. I think we're going to see more and more artists who we see a full vision that involves color and everything else. Maybe that's too optimistic of me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely going to be some of that. I mean, because there's room for it. If they can figure out how to meet whatever their schedules is, and obviously some of these some of these creators do that. Like you said with the Image, with them taking a break or whatever. So you do get that because there's going to be some artists who are artists in a sense that they're going to do the whole product as opposed to just being a penciler or the inker and whatever. I don't think those other ways of creating the book are going to go away.
True.
Because I remember a time when the whole scanning the page in had become the huge standard. Obviously, you didn't have to mail pages into the company
Right.
to have them, or mail them to the inker or whatever. They could just scan them in and then print them out and do whatever. That was going to be the death of inkers. That was the end of inkers,
Right.
because you weren't going to need them anymore, because obviously you don't need somebody to go back over the pencils, because you can print out an inked page and whatnot. And I remember reading articles and listening to podcasts that had inkers on it, and the inkers themselves were saying, my days are numbered. I'm the
Right.
dinosaur. I'm probably the last generation of person who's going to be doing this. Well, that was almost 10 years ago that those conversations were being had. There's plenty of inkers out there. The inking is still a thing. They discovered that doesn't the reality of that, it isn't what it needs to be. And I think that I
I
don't think
would I would beg to differ a little bit.
you think so?
I think there's a lot less inkers, and I think that when I was in my first and second time of being deeply into comic books, which
Hmm.
was the mid '70s and then the early '80s, and up through late into the '80s, I was deeply into inkers. I recognized inkers' styles, and I really cared who was inking this issue once I educated myself.
Right.
And now I almost never notice who the inker is, but I do notice who the color is. So and well, I just have this at the top of my pile. There's no inker listed here, um, and it maybe that 70% of books still have separate inkers from the penciler. I don't know, but I think maybe a lot less than that.
Mm.
So I think inkers are not dead in the water, but I think they're way down from where they used to be. I mean,
Well,
I'm not saying
yeah,
color
you're right.
will go
You're
away.
right. You're right. There's probably no. I don't think so, because I don't think any of those things are going to go away. I think that you're right in the sense that there's going to be less of all of them as we get these Fiona Staples type people who are going, I am doing the whole thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I mean, I guess that does to some degree limit that or whatever. And I think part of what creates that kind of that that artist creates that style of artist is people are trying to get themselves out there, trying to find new ways of getting their foot in the door,
Right.
and you can't just pencil and put a penciled product up on the internet for people to look at. Chances are. So I think you teach yourself how to do the whole thing, so you could put your own web comic or whatever you need to do out there to
Right.
to be able to sell your wares, to then be able to create what you want to create, I think. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I can't name a lot of inkers off the top of my head of this generation.
Right.
And you're right. And I certainly can in the late '70s and through the '80s. I can name people. But I'm not sure exactly why that is. I don't know if that's because there's less, or that those people had bigger influences in the company themselves.
Well, I think it
Nick
used to be
Hernando's
that
and
most inkers were also pencilers too. They switched back and forth, but some people were like, say, Klaus Janson,
all right.
also pencils. Um,
You're right. There's lots of books where
they were full artists in their own right, and
Mhm.
you could throw them these loose sketches, and they could turn it into
right,
something good.
right.
And
There's lots of
maybe the current inkers can do that too, but you can't tell that they can do that. You don't see them. You don't
They're
see
not
them switching back and forth between
they're
pencils.
not given. I don't think they're given the opportunity to.
Yeah. So,
I think time constraints in some ways or another. I don't know if that's what it is, deadlines and whatever else that's involved with that makes it impossible. Um, but yeah, that is true. I mean, because you're right. You think about like the mid '80s. It seems like there were artists that were inking each other's work all the time. That now I consider them to be their own artists in their own sense.
right.
Frank Miller inked tons of other people's stuff along the way,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, there's just a lot of them that I would consider artists now in their own right, but they spend a lot of time inking other people's things and whatnot. Yeah.
And what was I going to say? It does seem like a lot of artists do their own inking, like say Cliff Chang or whatever.
Hmm.
That's clearly inked work, I
Yes.
think. But
Yeah.
rather than be able to produce 12 issues a year, he only produces 8 issues a year or 7 issues a year, it
Hmm.
seems, because he'd
Hmm.
rather do his own inking. Um,
Well, and we say inking. There's some people who don't even put anything down on a physical page.
that's true. He could
If a
be.
staple does not produce a physical page.
She does. I read an interview. She goes out to cafes and draws thumbnail sketches,
Right.
and then she does the rest on her
Right.
Cintiq or whatever it's called.
Right. Whereas you use Cliff Chang for an example. Cliff Chang does the blue line work digitally, then prints it out and inks everything. And
Oh,
the
that's
reason
interesting.
he does that, the only reason he does that is because he wants that secondary income off of the original pages. That's the only
That's
reason.
yeah.
That's the only reason he does it. He says he could produce a lot more if he never went to that. But there are some other artists that have gone totally digital.
Well, maybe those original pages have something to do with why they don't split the labor so much either, because it's tricky to decide who gets paid what when you sell a splash page for $1,000.
Yeah, I don't know how that. I have no idea how that works.
Marvel when they first started returning artwork, they had a formula like the inker got so many pages and the penciler got so many pages. But given that certain pages are worth a lot more than others, there must be a lot of tension there.
Yeah, I don't know who. I don't ultimately don't know who ends up with the. Trying to think when I have purchased, because I have purchased some pages. Like I have a Batgirl page that Dustin Wynn does the pencils on, and Derek Flowers, I think is his last name, does the inks on. I bought it from Derek, but I mean the two of them are standing there.
Right.
But it was in his portfolio. He was the one that was selling it. I paid him, so I don't know if if he gives Dustin a cut or he bought the page from Dustin at X price and he's selling it for X price more.
Right.
I don't know. That would be all really kind of curious to see what that. Have no idea.
Well, and another thing that you see is when you do see people with inkers is they often have the inker follow them everywhere they go. Like John Romita always uses the same inker now. Is it Klaus Janson, I think?
Mm-hmm. Then it makes sense. I mean, I guess that makes sense. You're a good team. You know each other. You know how you work. Then it kind of.
And if you've worked together a lot, you may have worked out a deal of how you handle this, since the art sales are now so much a part of their income. Yeah. I mean, that wasn't the case in the 70s or the early 80s.
Right.
It could have been a big part of their income, but no one knew it could have been, so it wasn't.
Right.
But I think that we might see. I think we're already beginning to see certain artists who always want a certain colorist with them.
Sure.
With Miss Marvel, the art and the color blend so much. I certainly have to think that it would be completely different with a different colorist. So that artist, this artist who does Ms. Marvel in a very distinct style, I wonder if
Well, yeah,
he or she works very closely with her colorist, or was just assigned a random colorist and it happened to turn out that good.
Right. You're right. In the case, like I can think of like two artists right now that definitely use the same colors, seem to be the same colors all the time. Saratino, who's currently doing Green Arrow. Of course, he did iVampire. He has the same colorist the entire time, which I'm.
Mialo or something like
that? The thing is he didn't color issue 1 of Green Arrow. Issue 1 of Green Arrow.
He colored it himself, I think.
He colored it himself because Lano was still coloring. He was still coloring iVampire because iVampire was still, there were still a couple issues left of it. They had a substitute artist that was doing the actual art. So he was still coloring that, so it attempted to make the book look still like iVampire, even though it didn't quite. And you could tell there was a difference with Sarantino coloring his own thing. It was kind of that style, but it wasn't the same. Gilliam March. Gilliam March is another person who seems to be. He always has the exact same colorist wherever he goes. That same colorist since I don't know, the last 5 or 6 years. Well, he's had a contract, I guess, with DC, a 6-year contract. For at least that 6 years, he's had the same colorist the entire time on all of the work he's done.
Right.
So obviously they're a team. Whether they work well together or the company has said, hey, we like your work together or whatever, I don't know, but yeah.
Hasn't J.H. Williams said he'll only have your guy,
Dave Stewart. I haven't seen anybody else color his work besides Dave Stewart in the last, for forever, really. I don't know if he's actually made that statement, but
I
if
heard
you
an
get
interview with one or the other of them. I think it might have been Dave Stewart, but
Mhm.
indicating that there was a plan that they would always work together.
Right, I think he's also got the same deal with Mike Mignola, that if Mike's actually doing the work himself, that if it's going to get colored, it's colored by Dave Stewart too. So.
And Jordi Belair, like on Pretty Deadly, she seems like a really important part of the team.
Uh-huh.
And the colorist on Black Science feels like he's
Oh
very
yeah,
crucial.
his painted colors, as they
Yeah,
call it there. I don't know exactly what that means. In comparison to what everybody else is doing, I have no idea. I'd love to know the mechanics behind that,
yeah,
as
yeah.
to why they call it that, or is that just their cute way of saying colorist as opposed to an inker versus an embellisher or whatever. But
Right.
yeah, because I've collected their books thinking, oh, it's the same artist, and well, like
Dead Body Road.
right. So I was excited to get that because it's the same. I'm thinking, well, this will be, and no, I mean, there's some facial structures that look the same between
Hmm.
both books, but beyond that, there's a huge difference in the books. That coloring makes a huge difference.
So I feel like the colorist is rapidly becoming what the inker was back in the early
Mhm.
80s or
Yeah.
70s. As, if you see that this colorist is on this book along with a good artist, then you get extra excited, or I do anyway.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah.
Dean White, I guess.
Well, if I can remember the names of colorists, there must be something going on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I figure. If we're remembering the colorists' names, then especially when their names aren't like put on the covers. I mean, Marvel does a pretty decent job now of that,
Yeah.
but DC hasn't caught up yet to put
Yeah, and that
colorists on the
seems
covers.
really sleazy of DC because I feel like DC has some very good colorists and should treat them better.
Hmm.
Like the one on Sarantino.
Right.
Um, oh yeah, another example. Just kind of, we probably have hammered home this point too much, but I know you didn't like Mercenary C, but that's drawn in color as much as it's drawn in ink.
For sure.
I'm pretty sure it's drawn entirely digitally anyway, just from the way it looks.
Yeah.
But you can almost see the Photoshop layers that he was using.
Hmm.
But anyway, so I like these things. That gives me an extra hook to what to look at and get obsessed by in the comics.
Hmm.
Anyway, I should point out to my wife, instead of being obsessed by women, I'm obsessed by comics.
Yeah. There's a lot of mechanics about comic books that to this day, I still find fascinating as to why. Like in the past, you've talked about panel layouts and how many panels to a page and all of that stuff. That's all, I think, really important stuff to tell a story in a comic book and whatnot. And of course, it's one of those things I always live in fear of. If you people who read digital comics are going to kill a whole entire layer of what comic books are about is going to get killed in digital.
In terms of layout and page paneling, and I do worry about that too. I agree with your fear of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more coloring observation. I just read tonight the latest Richard Corbin.
Yep.
He is not listed as the main colorist. A daughter probably, Beth Corbin Reed, is listed as the colorist.
Mm-hmm.
And the art looks different to me. And Corbin has been someone, from way back who did his own full color work, always produced it himself. So this is, maybe some of the stuff he did for Marvel briefly, maybe someone else colored that, I don't know. But all the work he's famous for, he colored it. I think he even, when he used to do the color inserts for Warren Comics, he created his own color system with the printer because he was doing a color with an airbrush, so it was entirely different from coloring in normal comics.
Right.
So it was kind of a shock to realize maybe he's got tired of doing coloring, or I know he's over 70.
Right, or maybe he's, I don't know, maybe is he coloring digitally now? And if he is, maybe he's giving credit to the person who's flattening for him, or
That's possible, yeah.
helping him do some of the legwork, and he's just because he's in control of it to
Right.
say, hey, I want to make sure that
It
these
says
people know.
coloring by Beth Corbin with Richard Corbin.
Right.
Beth Corbin Reed with Richard Corbin. So
Yeah.
it kind of implies to me that she did the bulk of it.
Right.
But it looks different to me. It feels flatter or something. I still
Yeah.
liked it,
Oh
but
yeah, same here. But you're
since
right. It did look a little different.
since I look at Richard Corbin as kind of the lead, his comic books looked 20, in retrospect, he was 20 or 30 years ahead in terms of coloring from everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that was interesting to me. I think digital may be less of a fear for you now, as we've spoke before, but looking at my own digital behavior, I'm using Comixology way less, and I think the whole digital comics world is going to be fractured because a whole bunch of people are going to try and move in and take over Comixology's spot.
Yeah.
And Marvel's trying to promote themselves separately from everybody. I don't know if you saw, they just made a deal with Samsung. If you buy a Samsung device, you get 3 months free of Marvel Unlimited.
Yeah.
So, but I think that the end result, if it's really fractured, is that will make it digital less successful and less appealing.
Good.
Which will mean more odd, oversized issues like
No.
Superannuated Man, which I also ran again because I can. I guess I don't have it in front of me. I ran out and got that because I can follow my impulses.
Uh-huh.
Are you gonna need to go soon?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I was just looking. I have comic books sitting around here, and I was looking to see if I had my issue just sitting here that I could pull out, but I don't.
After reading the first issue of that, I kind of want to wait for the trade. Because it felt like so little happened.
Mm-hmm.
But it was enjoyable, the uniqueness of both the art and the story.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be strange. It'll be strange. It probably better in trade than in the singles, but I'm gonna get it in the singles.
sorry, I'm glancing over at comments.
Sure.
Roger's here. Mr. Gretzky 9966. The Space Baby. Reader 1717.
Okay.
So thanks everyone for watching. Space Baby says, thoughts on the new broadcast in terms of atmosphere and sustainability. I'm not sure what he means about that. I don't know what he means by new broadcast.
Don't know either.
So I am, to go back a little bit, I'm extra worried about DC with their new move to Hollywood, because they already feel like the weaker company to me. I mean, I was really pro DC about a year ago, or maybe a little further back. But the latest editor to leave and move to Marvel, Katie Kubert, who's the editor of Batman Eternal.
Yeah, one of the other Batman editors.
And a subtler thing, but their longtime liaison to the comic book stores is leaving. And they've replaced him with somebody from the Disney company who talks about corporate synergy and things like that, and doesn't have any background in comic book stores.
Right.
And so that makes me nervous. Yeah. And they're going to have a 2-month period that's going to be edited by Tom DeFalco while they get the rest of their act together, which also is like, wait a minute, can't they? I mean, I know moving is hard, but
yeah, I don't know.
Why are they having Tom DeFalco take over for 2 months?
So where did you hear that? Where did you hear that at? Because the only place I'm seeing anything is talking about this whole, there's going to be this 2-month period where we're going to potentially get crazy comics, or who knows what's going to happen, kind of a thing, is from Bleeding Cool. It's been kind of, they've been calling it the Band-Aid fix or something like that, is what they've been writing these articles about, how during that 2 months we're just going to get, you know, crazy pants comics from DC because God knows what's going to happen, because it's going to be just this giant whatever, which I mean, granted, I can't even begin to imagine all the things an editor really does. How many moving pieces editors have got their hands on, and they're juggling that entire time that stuff's
Right.
happening and whatnot. But it's the home office is moving. The creators aren't moving. The people who are involved in making the product aren't going anywhere. So I don't understand why there'd be this 2-month period where it's going to just
Right.
be crazy pants because no one else is moving. You know,
Well, I
so I
thought
just
I'd read about Tom DeFalco moving on other sites, but I could be wrong. I have not been reading all these Band-Aid things because I don't want to get too sucked into Bleeding Cool's.
right.
I wish I didn't look at Bleeding Cool at all, but I
Same
can't
here.
seem to resist.
Same here.
But I don't read everything they put out.
Yeah, I don't either. So I just was curious. To me it seems kind of strange that you can't figure out how to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I know you're moving stuff, but that's what you have
I
movers
think
for. I
you,
don't.
for those 2 months or whatever, you hire extra people to help you with the physical moving and all the other
Right.
hassles while
Yeah,
the
I
editors
didn't.
still do their job.
Right, I didn't realize the editors were the ones that are going to be involved with carrying the boxes out to the moving
Right.
truck and driving the truck across the United States to get it from point A to point B. I mean, I don't know,
Right.
but and for me that's nothing against DC or whatever. I just I mean, but that is kind of a strange move. One thing I will say that I thought was interesting, good and bad, I guess. They just had a big corporate meeting where DC Comics had to talk to their shareholders and whatnot, and they had Diana Nelson in there, who's the head honcho of DC Comics right now. And I guess some shareholder scolded DC for being pretty horrible about the level of women in comics, both in the comics and behind the scenes, and all the diversity that needed to be there wasn't there. And of course, they also commented that Marvel sucks too, but why aren't we doing more? And she supposedly promised that there would be more,
I
but
thought
her
that was about women in the comic book movies.
no, it wasn't just in the
Oh.
movies. It
The
was it
one
was
the
in
article I saw focused on the movies then.
the one I saw was it was in comic books and all that stuff, and it was kind of the whole thing, what DC and all of their
Hmm.
things, what they're moving forward, and some of that was look, we're going to have that obviously we're doing better because we're going to have this iZombie TV show. Wonder Woman's going to be we're going to be putting out our own movie supposedly at some point, and supposedly we're going to move all that stuff. But she kind of basically said, well, ask me that question again in a year, and
Right.
we'll see. So I don't know. That's a good or bad. I mean, they're saying they're going
Right.
to do it, but they're also saying come back in a year. I don't know, but that's a better answer. That's a better answer than Dan Didio's ever given, where he just always kind of wants to say, show me the people who can produce this work, and we'll make the work happen. Which is a dumb thing to say because there's tons of people out there who could produce the work, but I don't know.
Well, so all in all, I worry that DC may. I mean, it seems like DC's been badly managed to an extent, and it may get a lot worse before it gets better if a lot of their editors don't move with them, and they're hiring a bunch of new people, and a lot of them are perhaps coming out of the Disney ranks.
Hmm.
Um,
I, I haven't heard about them hiring editors or promoting many editors really though, other than pulling Doyle out of Vertigo and making him the head editor of the Batman wing of everything when Mike Martz left. I haven't heard about them replacing these
yeah.
people, any of these other editors that are going away. Now, those editors at those two editors, Katie, can't remember her last name, Kubrick or whatever it is, and Mike Martz, I think both of them were good editors. Their books anyway were enjoyable books. I've always
Right.
enjoyed their books, so I've not heard bad things about them from creators mentioning anything or whatever. So it's unfortunate to have them go away. But maybe it's a good thing. Maybe they'll find somebody else to do something else. I kind of doubt it because I think both Marvel and DC are so strangleheld by the larger corporate machine that has nothing to do with comics that I think the reality is we're not going to see anything too special.
Well, and moving them to California just to me makes it feel even like it's going to get even worse in terms of that corporate hold on things. I mean, I think that would be your whole purpose. Let's get this. We can manage them better if they're near us. kind of thing. At least that's the kind of thing I would see in my company.
Sure.
Uh, Lego Geek 4671 has joined us, and he asks a question which actually leads me to another thought. But he asks, "Does anyone think Matt Fraction's Hawkeye is going to get canceled?" I think Matt Fraction is moving away from Marvel.
When was the last time we saw that book come out?
Right.
I don't know whose production is slow on that. Is it his? Is it Aja, the artist, that's dragging feet on that? Or, I mean, I know the guy can only write so many books, and Marvel kind of pulled him off of a bunch of stuff to have him do some other things, and then the other things that he was supposedly going to do, he doesn't seem to be doing those either. So I don't know.
And he has a surprise hit with Sex Criminals. I think, in a bigger picture there, I think we're going to see more and more creators shifting. It seems more from Marvel than DC, shifting away from Marvel to Image more. I bet eventually Rick Remender is going to be not so much at Marvel. And a number of these other writers, they'll get a little more well-known at Marvel, and then they'll move back to Image if the Image boom continues.
If you're making money, yeah.
If they're making enough money and they're doing their own thing and they own it.
Right. Because I'm assuming that the work for Marvel is the steady paycheck kind of a thing.
Right.
Because all those people have kids and families and bills like all the rest of us to pay for. So you hold down the corporate job because that's the steady income, a little more secure, and you venture off into the other things to see what you can do. In the case of like Ed Brubaker, who was writing pretty heavily there for Marvel here recently, before that heavily writing for DC, he's flat out said, not that he would never work for those companies again or whatever, but he has no interest he only has interest in writing things that he creates.
Right.
That's all he's interested in now. So,
and he can afford to say that at the moment because not only are
he has a contract
pretty well, but he's getting a lot of movie and TV money.
Yeah. Well, he just signed a contract. He just signed a contract. Him and Phillips just signed a contract with Image. Image actually wrote a contract for them. I don't know exactly.
All contracts can be broken, though. If the money stops, the contract is over. But I think if the money keeps flowing, I think people like Rick Remender and I'm guessing Matt Fraction is moving away from Marvel. He's probably saying this is too much of a hassle, and I'm making enough money elsewhere.
Yeah, you look at what he writes, right? Away from his corporate stuff, away from the Marvel stuff, the stuff that he writes is fringe stuff. I mean, all of it is. All of it's fringe stuff. You like it or you hate it, I think.
And even some of his Marvel stuff is fringe stuff.
I think that's his. He's a quirky, odd guy, and that's his thing. Is that quirky, odd kind of stuff? And I'm sure if he could find a way to comfortably do that, that's what he would do.
Well, that's one of my predictions from the future, that you're going to see
more
Marvel start losing writers more quickly. Ed Brubaker being the first one. Mm-hmm. And certainly someone like Brian K. Vaughan has no need to work with the big two anymore. He used to do it through Vertigo, but he's not ever going to do that again, probably, or not in any foreseeable future.
Well, or if they do, they're going to change the way those contracts are written.
Right.
Right. So those people have more control over what's.
So I don't feel like Marvel's canceling Hawkeye, because I think Hawkeye was selling quite well with multiple printings all the time.
Yeah.
Really good selling trades. I think they're just having trouble getting their creative people to do the next issue because they're so busy with other projects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It'd be great if Aja shows up at Image somewhere, or some other company like Image.
Which I think that the delay we've got going on now, the shipping the Hawkeyes out of order was no big deal. I don't think it didn't really affect the storyline, because we've got these two different storylines going on with the two different Hawkeyes, so that's no big deal, I don't think. But the amount of time that has passed since the last issue that came out, it's going to make it really hard, I think, on the story. You know
Yeah,
what happened. I have a pretty good memory
I
for those
think a
kind of
lot of
things.
people have lost interest because it just has taken
Yeah,
too long.
yeah,
But I think the creators maybe have lost interest too.
could be
I'd be happy to be proven wrong because I would like to see that all wrapped up,
resolved. Yeah,
and I would have liked to have seen what they would have done next with Hawkeye because they created an interesting character, interesting group of characters around him, and then so I kind of want to see more, but
well, maybe that was the end. They're dead.
that could be.
Clint and his brother both get shot or stabbed in the head, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
done.
leave it at that.
There you go. No more Hawkeye.
Phew, I don't have to buy any more of those.
Yeah. Whew. But that was one of the few books that was still $2.99 from Marvel.
I know, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sort of.
So
I think
so
all the
what's
stuff in my head's.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So what's coming out? You asked me about independent books. If that's where I was headed towards more and
Mhm.
whatnot. What's coming out? I mean, is there stuff coming out in the future that you've heard about that you're chomping at the bit at, are going to be interested in?
I'm still. I don't know now when it's supposed to come out, but there was the new Brandon Graham series, like Four House or something like that,
Uh-huh.
and he was going to do it in collaboration with other people, and that sounded really cool to me. I think there's another Rick Remender science fiction one
Low.
coming out, Low.
Low. Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to that.
couple months it'll be out. Yeah.
And there were some more Image ones. Well, I'm not going to find my Image
Yeah.
page.
Well, and who knows, because the stuff they announced at their image expo and the reality of
That's true.
what
So
we
maybe
actually
that
see is a great distance from it. I'm kind of
Bitch
excited,
Planet. Bitch
right?
Planet. I don't know when that's supposed to come out.
Because Kelly Sue seems very busy, so I don't know what the reality of how soon we're going to see that. Um,
I
the
was
Wicked,
collecting Fatale in trades, but I'll probably jump on the new Brubaker one in floppies.
hmm that's
Uh,
coming right up. Yeah, August.
there was something else coming from Mark Millar that, even though I'm always nervous about him, I liked the sound of.
It
The whole
wasn't.
Millar world where he thinks he's Stan Lee or something, that drives me crazy.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
still do like some of his comics. I've been
yeah,
enjoying Starlight a lot.
yeah. He has a personality that drives me bonkers. Yeah.
Yeah. And I dropped the one he's doing with Quietly just because I wanted to wait for trades because I don't enjoy waiting so long for each issue.
Right. Right. Who knows when the next one of those is going to come out? So.
Yeah. Do you have specific ones you're looking forward to?
Well, the ones that you mentioned. Um, I know they've actually started working on Witches from Snyder and Jock, so I'm looking forward to that. I like anything that most things that Jock works on, so I'm excited by that. Interested to see Snyder do some more other work outside of Batman. Um, but trying to think, Wicked and Divine. I'm looking forward to that. I've always liked those two creators, Karen Gillian and Jamie McKevie. I like them together. I've liked them in the past and some of the work they've done on Photograph and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see what this whole new thing is going to be. Looking forward to getting into more issues of Trees.
Oh yeah, I hope that sticks to a decent schedule. I suppose Warren Ellis hasn't always been good on that.
He's not so bad. He usually ties himself to artists that tend to have
Oh, might
problems.
be the artist then.
The only time he's had a problem is when he was doing comic Fell. He either his laptop got stolen or it completely melted down and they couldn't save a couple scripts, and so it took him a while to attempt to recreate that. And by then the energy was gone, and Temple Smith was off doing Temple Smith things, and that all kind of fell apart.
Yeah, I'm sort of looking forward to the Wicked and Divine. I guess I don't love that creative team as much as you do.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed Young Avengers, but I didn't sink my claws into it too deeply.
Right. Right.
Although I read it digitally, so that might be the cause.
Oh, there you go. It was just fluff then, see, and
Yeah, it just went right through my head.
yeah.
And I continue to have lots of series that are ongoing that I look forward to a lot.
You know what Wonder Woman. Let's talk Wonder Woman for a second.
Yeah.
We're all growing about the fact that that's gonna, what we've got going on now is gonna come to an end. But I'm actually really excited for that. I'm excited to see how it all ends, and then I am morbidly curious to know what happens next. What are we gonna have this incredible sea change of her just radically becoming this superhero type character as opposed to the demigoddess that she is now in the book. I mean, are we going to have this incredible watershed or whatever? I am really interested to see what that's going to be. I'm really fascinated to see what that is. I'm actually really curious to see what Batman ends up being like once we're done with the 0 year and all of that spectacle, to see what comes next for it. So
yeah. I'm seeing something here called Dark Engine coming from Image, but I don't know what that is at all. By someone named Ryan Burton. Art by John Bivens.
There's a couple books coming out here soon from Image that I didn't hear anything about until I just happened to be ordering my comics, and suddenly they appeared. Real quiet kind of things that didn't have any fanfare or don't have creators that I'm really familiar with. That might be interesting to take a look at.
Yeah, and I can't remember everything, but I remember reading other things that were coming up that were more science fiction books, and I love science fiction, and so it does feel. I mean, there's been some cool science fiction in the past in comics, but it feels like Image is driving a mini bloom of science fiction right now.
Mm-hmm. Which, if you like science fiction, is really cool.
Right, and if you don't, is a waste of your time.
Right, because I've heard people complain about that. Oh, they're doing is putting out science fiction books and whatnot.
Right.
Like, well, that's fine because nobody else is, so why not?
Yeah. Science fiction doesn't have a history of big hits in comics.
Yeah.
But although there was Brian K. Vaughan's Why the Last Man.
Right, and I don't know that how much of it is. I don't think Image is out there going, let's find more science fiction books to write. Creators right now seem to be interested in wanting to attempt to do science fiction books, and so that's why they're doing them. I don't think Image goes out and is scouting for. You
don't think it's any reflection of their main editor's tastes?
Well, that may be to some degree. They may be more receptive to somebody pitching them a sci-fi story than pitching a romance story. That certainly could be the case. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but I don't think they're actively pursuing. Like DC, Marvel, they decide what their voice is going to be, whatever that is, if they even think about it anymore. It doesn't seem like they do, and then that's what they produce. They find somebody to produce what they want, whereas that's not the case of Image. Image, Dark Horse to some degree, even though Dark Horse does have some lines and some products that they kind of push their own kind of thing, but
maybe it is in the zeitgeist of comics because even Vertigo's been doing more science fiction than they used to.
Well, and so is Oni Press is putting out more sci-fi stuff now also. They kind of to some degree a lot of them are. So it may just be right now that's a creative itch that people are wanting to explore.
There's another Warren Ellis one that's going to come out in a month or two called Supreme Blue Rose.
Yeah, I was going to order that and decided not to. So one of those ones I may be scrambling to try and figure out how I can pick it up after the fact if it ends up being. I couldn't find enough information on it to make me know whether or not for sure I wanted to venture into it.
We just have to send me an email, and I'll go to the store, pick it up, and you just have to drive for 6 hours, and there you are.
Yeah.
It's only $2.99, so I'm excited about that.
Right, right. And
Oh,
that's
it's a previous Image character. I don't like the sound of that. Although,
see, that's just it. I don't want to step into. A lot of people like to use Warren Ellis, and Warren Ellis seems to be happy to relaunch things, get
uh-huh.
things spinning again or whatever. And I don't want to read something that he's just going to get it kickstarted and somebody else is going to come along and
Yeah,
do whatever else with. I want to be more invested, I guess. I'm still sillily liking the idea of being invested in a long-running creative team.
yeah.
So,
And well, that's one I'll just pick up the first issue and then see how I feel, since I
mhm,
don't have to order in advance.
yeah.
But they did do a good job with the old Rob Liefeld Prophet and turned him into something completely different.
Uh-huh.
So there's always hope, I guess. Well, I think we've gone on for about an hour and 20 minutes. Shall
Mhm.
we call it there, or do you
Sure.
have anything else related to all of this that you want to bring up?
Mhm.
Thanks again to everyone who watched us live. And Lego Geek says Pop by Kurt Pines looks interesting. It's a book by Dark Horse. Um, it's called Kurt Pines and Jason Copeland. I don't know what that is. I haven't seen that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Dark Horse seems to be losing the race. They're kind of. It seems like Image is doing what Dark Horse used to be known for doing, or something. But I mean, they still do some creator-owned comics, but they don't seem to get them promoted very well.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. They've got a few creator owned, and then they have lines. I mean, they've kind of
Yeah, like
are trying
that
to make
X that I was showing before.
right. They're trying to make their own comic book lines, kind of like the two bigger companies in a sense. They've got their kind of horror line. Obviously, they have the whole Magnolia universe and all of
Right.
it is, and that's their I think their bread and butter. That's their successful machine.
That's in terms
Um,
of creator stuff versus Star Wars and Buffy or something.
Right, which of course
Their
they're
other
losing
bread and butter.
the Star Wars stuff's all going
Right.
away, so I don't know what happens for them after that as far as that kind of thing goes. And then 2 years ago they claimed, they said we're gonna do our own superheroes. We're gonna do superheroes, kind of a thing. And so they, tried, pushing out Ghost. They tried putting out, they tried putting under that the X, Wingman. They've kind of grabbed a hold of some old product,
Right.
some old stuff that nobody has copyright on. Put out some of that. I think that they got Victories, which is superheroes, but its own kind of a thing. That's a creator-owned thing by Mike Oming. But yeah, but they've always been that kind of way, though, haven't they? They just kind of have these little horror things that kind of trickle out here or there from Steve Niles and that sort of a deal.
Well,
And
way back they were a big deal. Like the people thought they were, like people think about Image now. They thought they were gonna change the course of things by being a competitor to Marvel and DC.
mm-hmm.
And then in the 90s, they tried to do their own superhero line, some of which they're bringing back.
Right.
Some of it is part of what they're bringing back.
Uh,
Um, Maybe kind of a bad idea to bring back what failed for you 2 decades ago, but
right.
let's try again.
Right.
But yeah, even though Image feels more cohesive to me, whether or not they just take whatever's given to them by the Image has kind of a sci-fi and a gritty and a fantasy kind of cluster to me, and Dark Horse just has all these different zones that don't really
Mm-hmm.
fit together. They've got various franchises like Conan too, along with those other ones. I think
Right.
Conan's a pretty steady seller for them.
Right.
And they don't seem focused enough, maybe, on
But
like
there
it's
might.
just proving that focusing on creative owner, focusing and pursuing that one thing has worked really well for them, I think.
Yeah. But those licensed products must be lucrative. I mean, even beyond
Right.
the Star Wars stuff, because that's how IDW operates too. Is they've got all
Yeah.
this licensed, right now a lot of it's the Cartoon Network type stuff that they're reproducing and whatnot. And there has to be a decent market for those smaller
Right.
companies doing that. Because
But
there's a
I
lot of
wonder if it's short-sighted. You know, you have this license for a while and it makes you some money, but uh, you haven't gained a real foothold in the market. Like Image, I now trust Image. Any new book coming out from Image, I'm going to take a look at the very least and see whether I want to buy it. I
Mhm.
don't have that feeling about IDW or Boom or Dark Horse.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe in the long run they'll survive better because they're more commercial. But at the moment it seems like they made a mistake,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Sure.
Space Baby asks of me, am I an East of West fan? And I read the first two issues and I didn't like it, and I didn't continue. And I hear so many good things that
It's
I'm
an
probably
awesome
going to
book.
try to grade.
It is
Uh,
an awesome book.
but it really annoyed me. I think particularly the second issue really annoyed me, and I stopped reading it.
You didn't like those statements that they put on there and then not have an answer as to why we're supposed to regret our decisions and all that kind of stuff that they.
Yeah, and just, well, at the time it just felt like these four horsemen could randomly come in and just slaughter, and it just seemed like at the time there was no characters yet
Right.
to care
Right.
about, and it just seemed like the world was already over. You know,
Yeah.
here come the horsemen. They're magical. They can kill everyone.
I'll agree. It was about issue 4 that, I mean, I liked the idea of the book. Issue 4 hits,
Yeah.
and then it all clicks. And then it all kind of comes together. That there's this. I mean, not that we know everything, but it it opens the doors to all these these moving parts of this political machine and these supposed prophecy and agreements that have been made between these different groups of humanity and the Four Horsemen, and it's cool. Get it in trade.
I will. I think I've even postponed getting it in trade because in the meanwhile I was trying to read his Avengers run, and it's just too murky for me, and so
Yeah,
that made me hesitate on getting more Hickman. Who I
sure,
used
and I know Hickman writes for the long run, la 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 la. And I was starting to feel that way with East to West, like I said, until I got about issue 4, and then and it hasn't felt that way. It hasn't felt that way now. Whereas I know a lot of Hickman stuff sometimes can feel like it's taking way too long to. Oh, I know a book that I'm looking forward to. That's one of the DC's Multiverse by Grant Morrison. I'm morbidly looking forward to that too. I just am really fascinated to see. I'm deeply fascinated by it because, of course, granted, we're 3 years out now from when DC relaunched their entire universe, and they're gonna throw out a book that basically dirties the water that they supposedly tried to clean up by restarting everything and simplifying everything and like that. And now we're gonna throw a book out there beyond the Earth 2 stuff. We're gonna throw another book out there that's gonna just,
right.
yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for it though.
But he's their only writer that the rest of the world has heard of, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, like Scott Snyder's a big star to all of us, but I don't think casual purchasers of graphic novels over the years know who he is yet. Whereas Grant Morrison is the best they can do when they don't have Alan Moore or something for name recognition.
Mm.
I'll probably pick that up. I was recently rereading All-Star Superman and reminding myself that I do like Grant Morrison because I had started to kind of hate him with some of his Batman work. And when he killed off Damian.
Yeah.
But okay, well let's stop it there because we could go on forever.
Yep.
And thanks a lot for joining me, and I hope we can do it again. Bye
Yes.
bye.
Goodbye.